I don't. If anybody has a objection, unless anybody doesn't, so we'll start.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Madeline, and I am the president of PreMedCC, a student-run organization established in the fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians. We know how challenging it can be to find guidance and mentorship, especially in the middle of a global pandemic. And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding guidance in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation students, people that lack financial resources, or just those that don't know anyone in the medical field. And one of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do them from the comfort of your own home. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Many of our sessions will end with a Q&A with our speakers, and any questions that you have can be put in the Q&A section on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answered. After you have attended our event, you can log onto our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today. If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you have attended our session today. Students that attend all of our sessions this year will receive a PreMedCC Scholar Award for all of the hours of mentorship that they have completed. And if you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends about PreMedCC, all of our social media accounts can be found at PreMedCC. Thank you very much. And today I'm going to hand it over to our medical student panel, who are going to introduce themselves.
We could start with the wisest to the least wisest. I don't know. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't mind starting. So hi, everybody. My name is Mark Douglas. I'm a fourth year medical student at Stanford. A little bit about myself, try not to be too long here, but I'm originally from Santa Rosa, California. That's where I was born and raised. My mom was born in Mexico. She was the first to go to college in her family. I think she really set the precedent for, our immediate family. And I sort of followed in those footsteps eventually, because in high school, it's kind of where my educational journey sort of nosedived. Like I didn't graduate, and then I just entered the workforce. I worked at FedEx Ground for like 5 years. Now, eventually I went back to school. I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, got my GED, and then after 4 years, figuring out what the heck I wanted to do, I transferred to UCLA and I got my bachelor's in microbiology. After that, I took a couple years off. I worked as a medical scribe, lived back home in Santa Rosa, got more clinical experience, and then ultimately applied and started in 2018 here at Stanford. And I'm still going through the journey. Happy to answer any and all questions. And in the future, I literally just decided that I want to be an anesthesiologist. That's my goal, and for many, many reasons. Right now, we're living on campus here at Stanford. I say we, me, my partner, and our daughter. So we have a 1.5-year-old baby girl, and that's why we're so busy today. So I'll have to leave a little bit early, but grateful to be here.
I can go next. Yes, so my name is Julio. I'm a second-year medical student at UC Davis. So a little bit about myself. I was actually born in El Salvador and immigrated to the US when I was 15. And initially moved down to LA. I used to live in North Hollywood, and then eventually made my way up to the peninsula. So I lived in South San Francisco for about, I'll say like 14 years until I moved away from medical school. And went to community college here at I went to college at San Mateo and Skyline College in the peninsula. And that was back in like 2009, 2010. Then I transferred to San Jose State, where I did my bachelor's, and it was actually in a completely different field. I did it in accounting and finance. So I graduated with that in 2013. And after that, I worked actually working wealth management. So I did a lot of fixed income research and stocks for Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. And then I decided to change careers into there was a lot of things that kind of like happened in there, and like made me go back into trying to fulfill my kind of like the dream to go into medical school. So I enrolled at the UC Davis extension and quit my job at the bank and started working for the Newcomers Health Program, which is the refugee clinic in San Francisco, the SF General. And I worked there for a little bit, for about 2 years, mostly during, it was like 2018 to 2020. So during the pandemic, and did a lot of pandemic work. And so I applied to medical school in I think it was like 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, to start in 2021 last year. So yeah, so I kind of like switched careers. So if you have any questions regarding that and taking extension classes, or any what it's like to be out of school for about like almost 8 years after I graduated, I'll be able to answer those questions. And I'm also like 32, so I'm also a little bit on the older side and had a different career. So if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer. But I think community college was the right choice for me. And then like going to community, transferring, doing a different career, it's like a lot, but it was great.
I guess I'll go next since I'm the other second year. My name is David Gomez. I'm a second year medical student at the University of Southern California, USC Keck. I'm from East LA. I've been here all my life. I moved around a little bit. So I was like in Boyle Heights and South Central and, you know, the greater Los Angeles area. But, you know, I've been here for my whole life. And my folks are from Mexico. So I'm the only one in my family to have any education after high school. I was not the best high school student. I will say that very plainly. I was going to become an English teacher. So I went to community college to be an English teacher. And I had to, you know, for anybody out there who's maybe in their first semester of community college and you're stressing a little bit, take it from me. I was taking math classes with teenagers. So it's okay. You know, I started in like algebra 1 in college, I think. But I met a very, very nice and inspiring neurosurgeon at Keck, actually. And I did a lot of shadowing with him, and I really, really enjoyed it. And, you know, I got everything together and I decided that medicine is what I wanted to do. So it took me 3 years, but I transferred out of East Los Angeles Community College. And I got a scholarship and went to USC, did my bachelor's in neuroscience. Applied, did some really wonderful extracurriculars with USC. You guys will see this too when you transfer. You know, there's a lot of resources available to you. So for me, there was a lot more money floating around. So I was able to do something that I really enjoyed. I was able to help out, open up a homeless shelter for youth. And I did that while doing school, studying for my MCAT. And I applied, and through some miracle, I got in. And I went straight through. So I did not take a gap year. I'm a little, I don't want to say younger, but I'm 23. So if you know you're interested in going straight through, we can totally talk about that. You can pick your questions and stuff. And I'll tell you sort of how I did it. It took a lot of planning, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm in med school now, second year. I do research on my free time. I do some student government stuff. I help out on admissions a tiny bit. I hang out with my girlfriend and my dog, and cook for my little sister and stuff. So you can still have a life outside of med school when you get there. But yeah, thanks.
All right, so I'll go last. My name's Ali. I'm an MS1. I just started at UCLA, so at DGSOM. I'm from Torrance, California. That's where I was born and raised. It's like in the South Bay. Both my parents are actually immigrants, so they came from Lebanon. And just like Mark, my mom kind of set the precedent. She was the first person to go to college in her family, and also wasn't the best high school student, but I knew I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to study science like her. And then I started finding my love for medicine around that same time. So went to El Camino Community College, took 3 years there, transferred to UCLA, majored in psychobiology, graduated. I honestly spent my entire time at UCLA during COVID, so didn't really get the experience over there or anything like that, but graduated and then took a gap year, did a lot of community research in Long Beach. And like by a miracle last second, I like got into UCLA. I'm actually in the Charles Drew program, so if any of you guys have questions about what that is and how that's like, I can give you a little more insight into that. But yeah, just started, so I might not have as much to say about the different aspects of medical school, but so far so good. There's a lot of time to like enjoy your life and do things. I play basketball a lot, research as well. I hang out with my girlfriend as well, like everyone here. So yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, nice to meet everyone. I think the first question is, did you get your associate degrees at CC?
Yes. So I did get an associate degree at the community college in business administration. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I did too. Go ahead, David.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I did not. I had to take like an exercise class to get a couple associates. I took almost all my prereqs there though, but did not get my associates. So
Yeah, I got my like a couple associates by the time I graduated. It honestly doesn't I mean it's a personal pride sort of thing, but in the long run it won't make an impact. I think it's hard to just let it go. I think as David did and just move on. Other people that I was in school with did that. And it's just a more efficient path. You know, you don't need to complete the AA or AS before transferring, getting up. The bachelor's degree is what really counts.
Yeah, I got my AA, but it wasn't something I was like going after. It just happened because I took all the classes anyway. And so a counselor recommended I just get it anyway. I don't think it makes an impact either. But just like David, I did do most of my prereqs in community college, actually.
Yeah, for me it was a little bit similar. So I did because it was not any biology or science major. I did complete all the requirements to transfer to San Jose State at the time for business for finance there. And I just had to take I took the last class that my AA required at San Jose State, and then I just applied because I already have the requirements. So they just sent me the degree, and I went to the graduation, but I was not even enrolled at Skyline at the time. I just transferred the class to San Jose State, but it just happened because I already had completed everything, and I was like, why not? If I did it, just send it to me. Yeah.
And Julio, we have one question that's specific for you. What classes did you take through the UC Extension program? And then how did medical schools see those in your application?
So pretty much I took all the science classes from Bio 1 all the way to OChem 2. So everything at UC Berkeley Extension. And pretty much, so I'm also at the admissions like ranking committee for UC Davis like now during this cycle. And then I feel like a lot of the UCs, including Davis, they see very favorably the most recent classes that you have taken, because they willingly told us, hey, if the student has been out for 2-3 years and they see a very sustained improvement on the most recent classes, take those a lot more into account than whatever they did before. So I think it is so very favorably. And also I think because I was a little bit older, it gave me a lot more, I was a lot more centered this time that I was at UC Berkeley. And honestly, I did a lot better than I had done in community college or at San Jose State. Yeah, with all the science classes there.
And then I think our next question is one for everyone. Did the medical schools that you applied to ask about why you went to a CC instead of a university during your med school interview?
I had a few interviews. Only one school asked about this. I don't think I should say who they are, but I accidentally also answered someone's question, but thankfully they're related. So someone also asked in the chat, very related, I'm really worried I'm not in like a large feeder school for medical school, which is in tandem with this preceding question. And to answer both at the same time, just for brevity, like it does not matter at all. I can only speak on behalf of my own experience looking at applicants and interviewing and such, but I think most people understand that community college is, the the only path for some people, frankly. The most of us don't come from generational my dad was a doctor, my grandpa discovered penicillin. Most of us don't come from this. So it's never a negative to go to community college. And like I said, I took every prereq except biochem and higher science at community college, and I did well. And that A never counted any less than the A's I got at USC. Never. So, yeah.
To add to that, I feel like I also got asked at one school that I interviewed at, but it wasn't like a stigma thing. It was more of just curiosity. And same thing, if you just explain why you went to community college, especially like socioeconomic disadvantages and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter at all. What I have heard from people in admissions is if you go to a four-year university straight out of high school, but you take your prereqs or like science classes at a community college in the winter or the summer, that can be frowned upon because it looks like you're shying away from difficulty maybe. So I wouldn't recommend that necessarily, but going from community college out of high school or after a few years and then transferring over has like, you don't really get asked that, and it doesn't have an impact, and your grades, like David said, don't really look like much differently to admissions.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think when they look at the transcript, I think it was about 2 schools that asked me about community college, and because it was a long time ago, back in 2009, mostly they asked me what I had been doing in that time after I finished community college and the bachelor's, and mostly they asked me about my previous career and like how did I know that this was the right thing for me. So pretty much like have a very good prepared answer in the interview sessions when you have, because I think the interviews are very good at looking what your application. They kind of ask pointed questions, what they wanted to specifically know about you. And in my case was like 2 schools asked me community college, how was the transition into bachelor's, and then the other one's asking what have you spent doing for the past like 8 years before medical school. Yeah.
This is my question. This is actually for Ollie, and I know Mark's story a little bit, so it's kind of not fair, but how did medical schools view you taking 3 years at community college? And I think each of you took more than 3 years, right?
Yeah, so I never was really asked about the 3 years. What I got asked, I think, but the reason why is because I wrote in my application a lot about like how much I was working alongside doing school and community college. And so I had activities going on in place of that. So I think people more so asked about like, how was your time in community college? What did you learn from like working and doing all these things while being in school? But I don't recall ever having someone ask why I took 3 years and all this stuff. I feel like most students take more than 2 years actually at community college before transferring. So I don't think it'll make you look a certain way or anything like that. And I don't really think they get like that. They'll ask about that, especially if you're doing things in the meantime. But even if not, I really like highly doubt it.
Yeah, I was never really like directly questioned about that. I'm sure it was probably discussed, and like it kind of speaks for itself. And to be even more transparent, like after high school, way a long time ago, I took some semesters at community college and like failed. Like I had F's on my transcript there, and I was like I had stuff on the transcript from so long ago. And so technically you could say I was at community college for like 6 years, and then I had to do like academic renewal and like reset my GPA because so much time had went by, blah blah blah. But like, the journey through my community college experience, like it kind of invariably like spoke for itself, like an upward trajectory, like and just sort of finding myself. It came out in my story, like the rationale for what the transcript was showing. But I don't think I was ever questioned like, oh, like with a negative connotation specifically.
Yeah, and the only thing I'm gonna add is like it takes longer than 2 years because you have to take general chemistry, bio, physics, you know, all of these classes, and it's humanly impossible because you'd be literally going to school from like 8 in the morning till 7 at night, and those classes, there's that rule that you spend 2 hours of studying for 1 hour of class, and so it's kind of
Yeah, and
impossible.
most of us are working, like I was
Yeah.
working, Ali was working, and then, what was I gonna say? Oh, and then David, you mentioned like taking like basic math classes. That was another thing too. When that totally resonated with me. I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't graduated high school. I was like remedial math. I was like fractions is where I started out at. And so I had to do all the math series. I'd never done calculus, and I was like, I can go through calculus. So it took forever of what it felt like in conjunction with everything else that was going on.
Yeah, definitely. To echo what Mark just said, quite proud of taking all those math classes. So if that's you, don't feel bad whatsoever. I mean, really, all that means is that you're taking a math class or two in the winter and in the summer and stuff, and you got to keep grinding. But you'll get past it. You're not the only one, and you won't be the last one.
Yeah, you say be proud. Like honestly, like I am so proud of my community college like educational roots. Like they're the jumping off point that allowed me to get where I'm at today in life. Like period. That's the best education I ever got. Sorry, better than UCLA, Ali. Trust me. And I was there before COVID. So like it's the best. I look back on it so fondly, and I appreciate like everything, the community, the everything we had at that point. And that's I think why a lot of us are still here trying to get back, and hopefully improve your guys' journey as you go through and eventually on into medical school. So
Yeah, I think everyone should be proud of like their journey, and coming from community college and making it to however far you're gonna make it is a really big deal, especially because there are like people who think there's like this myth that you can't get into med school if you go to community college or all these type of things. And it's not true. It's a huge part of your journey, and everyone loves an underdog story. And to a lot of people, you are that underdog if you start off at community college. I can't tell you how many times when I was in CC that I was like, yeah, I want to be a doctor, I want to go to med school. And like people from high school or like my friends or whatever kind of laugh it off. But like we're here now. And so you should always look fondly on like I'm here, I'm in the grind, and I'm going to get there eventually. And honestly, I'm so happy I went to community college. It was a great decision, probably the best decision I've made like in my life, was going to community college and like starting my path from there. Instead of just like being like, nah, I have this dream, I have this goal, but I have to start at CC, so it's just not gonna happen. No, it's a good thing that you're at community college. Trust me. You look back at it and you'll be very thankful that you went there.
This is another question. Is it better to take med school prereqs at community college or university post-transfer?
Well, I would say, because I did take some science classes at community college, and I would say science and math classes mostly. And I did enjoy those classes because the class sizes are a lot smaller. And then you do get to talk to the professor a lot more, know your classmates, you have more time to study, and the material is technically the same. So you will be learning the same, just like in a smaller setting. And just financially, also, it's a lot cheaper going to community college and taking those classes than doing it at like a 4-year at a state or UC. So for that sense, I would say it's good if you take them at community college. If you are like changing careers, I would say it's actually, in my opinion, if you take it at a 4 years, actually better. But since you guys are studying in community college, I would recommend doing them there, just because it allows you that smaller classroom setting and getting to know your professors.
Anyone else want to add to that?
If you're transferring into a science major, you're inevitably going to take a lot of the prereqs anyway, just to like meet transfer requirements. And so it really, I don't think it matters. Going off what Julio said though, it is a big difference, especially if you're trying to improve your study skills and like get that going. Being in a smaller class size in community college is really helpful. So, but I think if you're going to transfer into a science major, it shouldn't even be on your mind, that type of question, because you're going to have to take a bunch of those prereqs anyway.
Yeah, and I think Ali hit it on the head. If you want to transfer to a place like UCLA, Berkeley, Davis, any of the big UCs, they won't even like let you into the major. So even if you have 60 units, they may accept you, but you're gonna have to scramble with all the freshmen. and trying to get into those classes, and you're not going to be able to get into that major. So why not kill two stones with two birds with one stone? Sorry.
And one question that we have coming up quite a lot is the extracurriculars that you guys did. So if you guys would mind going through some of the extracurriculars you did at the community college level, and then what you did at university or beyond.
I can start. I had a lot, but you don't have to do all that. So I'll say what I did and then my 2 cents. So at community college, I shadowed I shadowed a very, very nice, wonderful surgeon who inspired me to go to medical school. And I volunteered at a children's hospital. So Children's Hospital of Los Angeles here. I would read to little kids by the bedside and also, feed them and give them their medicine and stuff like that. I founded a club. So at the community college level, what you guys will see is that you don't have many research opportunities. So I made a club to sort of in university, they have this thing, independent research classes. You do research and you get class credit. So I started a club at ELAC to do that. And, now they have a couple of those classes in biology and chemistry. I also did a summer research program. We can totally talk about that. So I flew to Pittsburgh and I got paid to do research. I did medical chemistry. So I was making drugs for seizure disorders type of thing. And then I transferred. And when I transferred, I did some more, the opportunities when you transfer are incredible. I mean, it's like a big, you'll see the gap why, why so many applicants are so impressive, because they go to these 4 years and they have just a plethora of opportunities. So when I transferred, I saw that too, right? I had to say no to research projects for the first time in my life because there was just so many. But there I ended up doing some volunteering. I was an on-site RA for this homeless shelter for youth. And I was cooking and, taking care of, helping these folks who were experiencing housing insecurity, who were college age. And those are all the big ones, my 2 cents on that is that, if you go on the internet or on Reddit or something, you can stress yourself out all day and you'll see all these people with just crazy ECs. I read apps nowadays that have just publication after publication in major journals and stuff like that. And that's great, but you're working with what you got. You're playing with the cards that you were given. And it's okay if you don't have all those miraculous extracurricular opportunities. What matters more than that is that whatever ECs you do stuff that you like. It really doesn't matter too much. I mean, of course, you have to hit clinical hours and show that you understand the field of medicine and how becoming a doctor is not always as glamorous as it seems. There's going to be way more hard days than easy days. Helping out patients is beautiful, but the system that we do it in is very imperfect. And if you can show that understanding in whatever EC you do, that's the best thing you can do. So pick stuff that you like as opposed to trying to do the checklist thing that every pre-med does. That was my mentality. I only did ECs that I liked. I quit way more ECs than I did. And some of them were very good and I quit them because I knew that if I was to write about it, I'd be lying about how much I liked it and how much it taught me. So it's better to do things that you like, enjoy, and that really call to you. So that's my TED Talk. Thank you.
I would say a community college actually didn't have any extracurriculars because mostly at that time I was undocumented, so I couldn't get many things, and I mostly work on the side at restaurants. So I started working when I was 17, slightly after 2 years after I came to the US, and pretty much I didn't do any extracurriculars at community college or at state level. So I didn't have that. I didn't do any research or member of any class or anything at all. So I had to do a lot of those when I was when I was actually working at the bank. I said when I started, and then when I quit in the working at the refugee clinic at the Department of Public Health, that's when I got involved into a couple of things. So I got involved into at UCSF. I was working at the refugee clinic there, and then we started this like green card medical examination program for people that are adjusting their status in the US. And was also doing a lot of medical interpreting for the UCSF Trauma Recovery Center, which is where a lot of the refugees and asylees go and receive longitudinal treatment by psychiatrists there. And one of the things that I did that I feel like did help me quite a bit in medical school was my working experience, because I had been working for a long time. And a lot of the skills that I did have from working in a restaurant, also working in finance at the DPH, a lot of my interview questions were based on that. And also I had been practicing something that had nothing related to medicine at all. I had been practicing like capoeira which is like a Brazilian martial art, kind of dancing, acrobatics and music, for about 16 years. And I put that as one of the most meaningful experiences in my application. And I would say like almost every single interview that I had asked me about that. It's like, why did this give to you? Why do you feel that this is important in your life that you had to highlight it in your application? And as long as you have something like that shows like a longitudinal involvement, I would say, commitment to one thing and something that you feel that's going to better you in the community, which it was like capoeira for me, because you work a lot with like underserved youths, a lot of immigrants, a lot of the people that come from Brazil, a lot of everybody, everywhere else. You know how to write about that and kind of explain that in your application. And it's longitudinal. Medical schools do like that, when they like commitment to one thing, and they like seeing that you're not going to give up, pretty much, that you are committed to one thing and you will do your best with what you have, like David was saying. So as long as you do the best with the opportunities that you have, you're going to have success, I feel like, in the application cycle and transferring and all the journey that you're going into.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add about research, there's a lot of things right now. There's a program, I put the link in the chat. There's also, we're going to have the director of the NIH Training and Education Program, and they have a program just for community college students. And we also had someone who did a workshop on how to get research experience as a community college student. So there's a lot of programs. And the problem is that I've talked to a couple of them, is when they do programs through community colleges, nobody applies for them. And the problem is, and the challenge is that if there's not enough applicants, then, they're not going to have these programs. But the other thing is that they pay you anywhere between $4,000 to $7,000 for the summer for 10 weeks. And that's more money than average undergrad makes. Now, if you're a manager at, I don't know, FedEx, or if you're making $50 an hour, then yeah, but there's a lot of these programs that you could do that pay pretty well. The NIH one, they pay for your travel. There's a couple in LA. There's a couple in Bay Area. I know that there's one in Arizona. So there's a lot of these programs. We've had some of them come and talk. So just go look at their videos and find out about the various programs. And then on the 18th November, we'll have like the NIH director that she created this program 2 years ago for community college students. So like, take advantage of it. The other question was, I think you had one, right?
Yeah, one of our next questions was, for a typical undergrad journey to community college, when do you think is the best time, undergrad to medical school, when do you think is the best time to apply to medical school, in your third year or your fourth year?
I think for those considerations, the main thing you want to think about is if you want to take a gap year or not. To say third and fourth year is kind of disingenuous, just because for most of us, we took more than 2 years at community college. So it might be your fourth or fifth year, whatever. We'll just say junior year and senior year, okay? So your senior year being after that, you get your bachelor's degree. just, for simplicity. So if you apply in your junior year, a year before you do your last year at college, then you can go, assuming you get accepted, you can go straight to medical school. That's what I did. So in my junior year of college, I was taking classes, I did my MCAT studying, and I made sure to take a light semester to have time for the MCAT, and I applied. And my last year of college, I was basically doing interviews, and I was fixing up my app and planning to move if possible and whatever. And, you'll get accepted if you're on a semester school. In your last semester, you'll know if you're going to medical school or not and where you're going. So, but if you apply in your senior year, then you'll have, it takes a year for you to get accepted. So you'll have that year, and that'll be called the gap year. And during that year, you can do whatever you want. You can beef up your app. If you know that you want to be a cardiologist or something, you can try to look for research and join a cardiology lab in your future medical school. That'd be a smart thing to do. Or you can just relax. It's totally cool. Relax and spend time with your family, because med school will be difficult and it'll be an adjustment. So that's the things you kind of got to think about.
Yeah, and I would say, like, for me, I took a lot of time off. It's a lot of work, the application process itself. It felt to me like I applied to like 30 programs at the time, because I saw the competition that was coming out of UCLA in terms of the pre-meds, and then talking to people, it's just like, oh yeah, we applied to like 30 programs. I was like, what the heck? When you like, I was reading at the time, like the average was like nationwide, it was like, I don't know, somewhere around 15 programs people would apply to. But yeah, I had this pressure to apply to so many programs, and it felt like a part-time job, just like organizing everything. And so that's I think the key word there is organization. Like, if you're going to apply your junior year, that takes incredible organizational skill, foresight, understanding. And it was something I wasn't capable of at the time. And I feel like for a majority of my educational journey, I've been making it up as I go. So I'm just like, I wasn't ready. And it wasn't until after I graduated that, and things settled down a little bit, and I was able to think, back at home and kind of like, put things together in terms of what I thought was the best overall application. I just tried to do things I enjoyed around home, working in the clinic and doing volunteering and what have you, before I felt truly confident and capable of going forward with my application. And I felt I could do it justice, because there was a moment there too where I actually started the application, and then I just left it alone. It was, I was overwhelmed at the time. So then it wasn't until, I was ready, and I felt ready, and I felt supported, and I was able to do it. And yeah, it's really dependent on your personal situation. But if you're going to do it earlier than most, like David said, it's going to take a lot of organization and planning. So that's what I have to say.
So I'm going to put Madeline on the spot. She's in the application process right now, and just talk a little bit about your experience and how much time you're putting in for your secondaries.
Yeah, so secondaries are definitely a beast. I still have some that I haven't sent in, even though it's October and this is what's considered pretty late in the cycle, seeing how most schools have started to send out admissions offers. So my biggest advice for people that are getting ready to start the application cycle is to look up online common secondary questions. So you're pretty much guaranteed to have a question about your personal diversity and how you relate to that. So that can be, I know a lot of us go immediately to ethnicity or race, but that can be other things. Honestly, I talked about being a community college student and having a non-traditional educational journey because I actually did a career switch. I was originally going into education. So I talked about that. But other questions that are common are a personal challenge that you've overcome. Another one that's very common now is COVID-19 and how the pandemic has affected your educational journey. So those are just a couple. I really recommend anyone who's getting ready to apply to look those up online and pre-write them. That was something that I didn't do, and it really did come back to get me in the end, because you have these common questions that if you already have good, strong answers and essays written for those, it'll take a lot of time off, because then most schools do have kind of unique questions that you can't really prepare for. So if you can have the ones that you know you're gonna see done and out of the way, that'll make it easier. Especially for me, somebody who's working full time and answering secondary, trying to get my secondary questions out of the way. It's a lot. So because of that, I did have to not apply to quite as many schools as I had sent my primary application to. So I just recommend, I know the word organization's been coming up a lot, being organized and knowing what to expect from schools, and then preparing in advance will really help.
Yeah, if I add a little thing similar to Madeline. When I was applying, and I was working about 45 hours because it was during the pandemic, and the Department of Public Health kind of switched our role. So they sent us in emergency mode to do a lot of random things. So what I did, it was like I put like a specifically chunk on my calendar. Like every evening I would work on just secondaries. I mean, obviously you feel like a little bit anxious because you gotta send them out, but that helped me kept like organized in that time frame, because it was like, okay, I had to do the work, and I kind of just had not work because I need some money. So I did specifically. I think I remember it was like Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, like in the evenings, I would just specifically work on secondaries after submitting the application. And I had a lot. And before I submitted my primary, I just wrote like everything that I had, because I had a lot to write, and then just put like I did like I remember my personal statement. My first one was like super long. It was like 5-6 pages, because I wrote like everything that I could in that thing, and I grab a lot of those chunks to prepare for the secondaries. But it's just setting up like a specific time and having that time, like when you know you're gonna be working, that helped me. So it's like especially when you're working like full time.
Somebody asked about the cost of application. Can you guys go a little bit into that?
The cost of applying.
Yes.
So my recommendation is, when you decide to start applying, sign up for the fee assistance program through the AAMC. And if you, there we go, there's the link. If you can, so I was in the FAP, and if you can get that, excuse me, if you can get that, it'll save you like thousands of dollars. Because I think primary app was like $150 for like a school, and I'm not sure if it's $40 for each school after that or something like that. And then secondaries are really expensive too. But if you get the FAP, you don't really pay for schools, like for the primary application. After you start paying after 20 schools. So if you apply to 20 schools, I don't think you really pay, or you pay like $150 or something. And then your secondaries usually get waived for most schools. I don't think I got waived at Davis, and one other school I didn't get my secondary waived. But just to put it out there, that's like a huge resource when you're applying. If you're worrying about cost of applying, that's like a huge resource to like think about.
And I'll second that, because I missed the deadline, and like I said, I was making up as I go, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know this thing existed. And then I had to just put everything on my credit card, and it's like thousands of dollars. So save yourself that if you can.
Yeah,
Also,
it's like $4,000. Sorry, it's like $4,000. So if anybody wants to give me $4,000, I will apply for your FAP and get it for you, and just give me that's a joke. Please understand it's a joke, but it's about $4,000. So because you get your application, you get a discount on the MCAT, you get a discount on MCAT prep stuff, you get on your primary, and some of the schools waive your secondary fees. So I know that Stanford's one of them. I think a couple of like Mayo's, and a couple of them, if you have a FAP, you don't pay for the secondary. So apply. Yes.
And just, I do want to put this in for people that didn't meet the fee, didn't get fee assistance program. You can also, if there's a school that you really feel strongly about and you're a really good mission fit for, or you would be a competitive applicant at, certain schools, if you email them, they will also waive your secondary fee. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you don't qualify for the fee assistance program, you still can, in some cases, get your secondary fee waived.
And then the other organization, that's a really good one. They do a lot of this stuff on Instagram. eMentor. They have a medical school ready program where you get mentorship with other medical students and some residents while you're applying to med school, and it's totally free. You just apply, and if you get in, they will kind of be there, kind of coach you and give you the ins and outs of it. There's a bunch of rules on there that you have to look to apply to the program, but that's another resource as well. Anybody else wanted to add to the application besides being ready and organized? And
I want to add like something. So now that I'm like doing screening application at UC Davis, I come to like realize a lot of people feel like they necessarily have to do every single little thing in their application about medicine. And that just seems like you're just like one-sided person. Like there's no more to that. But I will say like the strongest application that we have screened and like ranked are the people that have more to them than just like pure medicine. So I remember one of the applications that I saw, it was like this person that was like a professional violinist, and she wrote like one of her main like top 3 activities was just like being a violinist for like 20 years. Like, so that, and she just wrote about music, nothing to do at all in that activity about medicine. She just wrote why it was important to her. And I just made her seem like a more rounded person, because I feel like as a doctor, you can't just be solely about science, medicine, research. You just that. Even some of the, like now I'm doing some research with a CT surgeon, cardiothoracic surgeon at UC Davis, and he likes to go and like dance outside. And I feel like we just talk about that a lot in there, because there's a more facets to a person than just solely medicine. So if you can expand on those during your application, I think it will make it a lot stronger.
somebody asked, and I think this is mainly from Mark, how do you manage having a family? I would say very carefully and marry up, but but how do you manage being a medical student, being a dad, relationships?
That's a great and question and complicated answer. I think everyone's situation is different. Ours, it's such that Christina, my partner, she can stay home and watch our child right now, and it's very difficult. I think you're benefited by having a very understanding partner in terms of like what your everything you have going on, the demands that you have, the stresses that you're going to be under. And, I think it behooves you to have those conversations beforehand. Or you're thinking about having a family, or you already have a family, or you're going to start medical school. Like, how are you going to divide up the work to meet this new challenge? Because, this is the hardest thing, I've ever gone through in my life, getting through medical school. And then when you add a child on top of that, it's our first child, like all those new things, new challenges. Like on one hand, it's a blessing. And on the other hand, it takes a ton of energy because they never quit. They're 24/7. For me, I think the first year was the hardest. But now she's 1.5. It's a little bit, it's better once they're able to sleep through the night. And for us to happen around the 1 year mark. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's also very doable. And in some ways, I think, if kids, like, you're never going to be ready if you haven't had kids yet. And it's like during medical school, I do have the flexibility to, I get off early on some rotations, and I can go home and spend time with my daughter, and we can just play outside. And it's like really good way for me to decompress and relax. Residency, I see a lot of residents having children now, and it's even harder. Like, I think, I have a family member who's also a physician, and she was going through residency. And she said, yeah, my daughter didn't know who I was for the first 2 years of her life, like until she was done with residency. And that can be the reality for some people. And so, it's just accepting and then, tackling the challenge as a team, I think is key. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to have her here and help, see me through medical school. So yeah, happy to answer any further questions.
I think one question that was coming up for everyone that relates to that is just what is your typical routine like as a medical student, and how much free time do you have for studying, for things that you're passionate about?
I think, I can only speak for myself. I'm definitely not the brightest Crayola in the box, so I do study a ton. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But even with all that studying, you totally have time. You got to make time for things that are important to you. It's just that med school is going to really help you figure out what's important to you, because you won't have time to do any of it. And likewise in residency, it'll be worse. But again, residents still find time somehow, and attendings have way more time. So that's the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, they're still super busy, but you get it. So what really helps me, going back to this word, organization, is the special word of the day. I do like Google Sheets, and I'll type up all my tasks for Google Sheets and all the dates and my test date and stuff like that. And I just do all my tasks every day. And if I can't, I can't, and it's okay. Got to be nice to yourself. And putting yourself on a timer is very useful. So I like timing myself. And if you can, you treat it like a job. If you don't have a required class that day or whatever, work from 9 to 5 and then take the evening off and spend it with a loved one or walk your dog or something. It's important not to get burned out. It's really crucial as well.
I'd say like our curriculum at UCLA is a little different. So we have 1 year preclinical, and then second year we start our clerkships. And so our curriculum has started getting really fast paced recently. But even then, I feel like at least for first year, it's very much 9 to 5, like a full-time job. Most of us are studying, I'd say from like 8 a.m., like studying and doing classes from 8 a.m. to maybe like 6 p.m.-ish, Monday to Thursday. And a lot of that's because we have anatomy labs and we have like structural racism talks and stuff like that, which, they add on time to your day. I'd say studying takes about like actual studying time, like 3 to 4 hours a day. And then on Friday, most people take it off at like our school. And then Saturday, Sunday, I'd say is another 4 to 6 hours of like studying in the morning or in the evening. But everyone seems to have time to do things. Like me and my friends, we play basketball every Friday. And sometimes during the week, we'll find some time. Everyone seems to go out, especially here in like LA. Everyone like goes out on the weekends. They're always doing something weekend nights. If it's just like getting dinner or going out together, whatever it is. So there is a lot of time to do things. And like David said, you have to really kind of prioritize the 2-3 things that you really love, that you really enjoy. And those are what you're going to spend your free time on, because you will have free time, but it's not as much as before. And so you really like kind of want to hold on to it and make sure that you're making the most out of it.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say similar to Ali. I think studying, like full studying, it takes about 3 to 4 hours every day. And all of our lectures are pre-recorded, so we can see them ahead of time. And usually probably it's the same in you guys in medical school, but it's like we watch it everything at 2 times speed. And so it's kind of just get them done and like do some Anki on the side and kind of watch some outside resources. That's kind of what you spend those 3-4 hours in. At Davis, has been like my second year's been getting a little bit busier because we are in the student-run clinics and we have 11 of those. So I'm actually the clinic manager for Nice Landing, which is like a farm working community near Davis, and kind of that does take a lot of my time. And I'm also involved in a couple of research projects that like in surgery and some at the student-run clinic ones. So that's been taking quite a bit of time. I feel like some of the advantages of medical school that is a little bit different from undergrad is that the curriculum on most medical school is just pass-fail. So that does help a lot. And then that takes a lot of the relief of stress. So you can focus your time in other things, because at a point you're gonna be scoring, let's say I honestly was scoring about like very high, about 90s and stuff for some of the class, but I was like, okay, I'm doing more. Let me shift some energy into more research, because that's what I kind of like enjoy in surgery. So it lets you adjust that. And like Ali said, also like a lot of my classmates, they always have like dinners, or they go out, or they go like Napa, which is very close to Sacramento. So there's time to do things, but if you have something that very passionate you've been doing for a while, always keep that in mind. Don't give that up, because like that will help you once you're like feeling a little bit stressed and a little bit like that. If it is like playing guitar, dancing, soccer, basketball, like whatever that is, make time for that, because I think it's like a very valuable thing to do.
Yeah, I just second what everyone else has already said, and let you know that things will change over time, as you enter, as you leave the classroom and get into the hospital and the clinics. It's just going to depend what your rotation is, what you're doing, who you're working with, whether you're on like one of the required rotations versus if you're taking elective. It's highly variable. It literally just depends on who you're working with, who you're reporting to, which resident, which attending. Like sometimes they want you to go home early. So I did my elective anesthesia OR rotation, and when you talk about electives, they're typically there isn't an exam at the end. With most rotations, there's an exam, so you're also expected to, be studying after you get off from the hospital. But on the electives, like there's like, okay, we did everything for the morning. Like you got here at 6 and now it's noon. Why don't you just go home? So and then you have a lot of flexibility. And even some of the core rotations, depending on what it was, you get off at like 3 or 4. And so not as rigorous of a schedule as you were trying to just jam all that information into your brain in the first, 1 to 2 years of medical school. So it changes for sure. But I have to get going. It's been great meeting all the panelists and the facilitators and talking to everybody. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can I think Jobin, you can share my email, or I can just put it in the chat.
I can share it.
Okay, but yeah, again, good luck. You got this. Be proud to be a community college student, as we all are. So, all right, take care.
Someone asked about applying to only California medical schools, and can you guys talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people only want to apply in California medical schools, and can you guys share that?
Yeah, I can say so. I think everybody is kind of like aware that California is like a very nice place to live. So a lot of the schools here do get like a lot of applications. I would say I believe like UCLA gets about 16,000 applications in a cycle. I think Davis is getting about 12,000. So it's like a lot of people are applying to. So it's like it's very competitive. And also if you're like a California resident, if you go to a state school, it's also a lot cheaper. So it's kind of like a combination of good place to live, hard to get into. So I did apply to out of state schools, and I did interview at a couple of those, like in the East Coast specifically. Interview I can remember for my cycle at Howard, Georgetown, which are both in Washington D.C., Duke, and the University of Miami. So those are the universities I interviewed in the East Coast. But yeah, I would say if you apply outside of California, usually each state school have very biased towards their own state, specifically places like Texas that they mostly accept Texas students. So you apply to out of state, focus on the private schools because they do accept a lot of people from out of state. It just might be a lot more expensive, but I will say, yeah, I would recommend everybody to apply to out of state schools just in case, because the California ones do get a lot of applications. I would say every single one of those, like from Davis down to San Diego,
Yeah, so there's a statistics for every one California medical school seat, there's 47 application. This is included MD and DO. So it is tough. But we had a couple students last semester that went to Michigan State, and they were like, well, it came down to either I go to Michigan State or no medical school, and this is where I am. somebody else got into a couple of DO programs and another medical school, and it's how bad you want it. And yes, California is wonderful. We all love California, but the reality of it is that there's a lot more applicants than spots, because not only you have California people that want to stay in California, you have people from other parts of the country that want to come here. So, and even most of the UC schools like to take those students because they pay more money. So it's, so I would say the best way is to make a list of, to make a list. Ollie and David, do you guys want to share that? And also Madeline too, because you're applying to med school right now. How did you make that decision?
I'd say it's important to weigh out, like, especially if you're from California, like how okay are you to leave, especially if you have family here and stuff. So like, I really didn't want to leave California, but I still applied out of state. And I remember I had an interview coming up with a school in New York. And that same day, I was watching a YouTube video in the morning, and I saw like the subway of like New York, and I was like, I cannot live here for 4 years. I just can't. Like, it just gave me anxiety. And instantly I knew, like, even if I got in and that was my only choice, I'd rather reapply than go to New York. And I wish it's something I took seriously when I first started choosing schools that I was going to apply to, because it does take a lot of time to apply to schools. And so just like, you should know where, or like try to get an idea of where you're okay. If you're going to leave California, where you're okay, because it is tough to get in California. But like, don't lose hope. Also, I didn't get an acceptance to a California school till like March, May, almost, something like that, like end of spring. And so it's difficult. And if you think it's more worth to go to medical school than to leave California, definitely apply out of state. Just think about where you're okay with going.
Yeah, I'll echo what was already said. For me, I only applied to 20 schools. I say only just because, it's getting, people are applying to more and more, but 20 is what is covered by that fee waiver program that I did do. So, I applied to all the California schools except one. And I applied to some New York schools and like some other random schools that kind of fit my stats and that I like their mission statement and stuff. So I, personally, I was okay with moving. If that's what you got to do, then again, yeah, just like Ollie said, you got to decide like, okay, like, am I willing to, be a reapplicant and stay and have the chance to stay, or just bite the bullet and go? Keep in mind that for residency, you may not have the choice at all. Because the match there works differently, right? It's not like here where you sort of pick, you kind of are assigned, for lack of a better word. So it might help, and of course, where you go to medical school is more likely where you will be a resident. So you want to think about that too, right? If you're a California medical student, it's, off the top of my head, I know 87% of my class stayed in California, for residency. So you want to think about that too. It's likely that where you go, you'll also be a resident, and it's likely where you'll be a resident that you'll get a job as an attending.
I will say my experience is a little bit unique because my family doesn't live in California anymore. I'm actually the last one in my family to be in California. So as somebody applying this cycle, I do have an acceptance at a school that is in a state that's very much known for cold winters and a lot of snow. But because I'm in this position where my family lives in Washington, and I was not accepted to University of Washington, I was rejected immediately because I am technically an out-of-state student, even though my family just moved up there. So it's a little complicated. Either way, I know I'm not going to be near my family for medical school. So I think personally, I'm a little bit more open to traveling and to going to a new place and experiencing something new, just because that's my personal situation. So I think, it's just important to kind of keep in mind what you're looking for in a school and what's really important to you. For me, family is important, but I also know that that's already a done deal. And I don't want to reapply. So I think just keep in mind what's important to you and what you want. And then I know I am still pretty early in my cycle and I'm still waiting to hear back from a lot of schools. So just be patient. It's nice to hear from Ollie who's saying, just let the cycle play out. Right now it's October, so I'm still pretty early and I'm going to see what happens, but I want to be a doctor. And if that means that I'm going across the country, I'm more than happy to do it. So.
Somebody asked about, I've heard some schools favor research experience, but if research is not something I'm passionate about, can I still get into medical school?
For most, like a large majority, absolutely. Some schools do have a hard pass on research, and you can kind of see that in the AMSAR data. I don't know if you guys know what AMSAR is, but it has like a bunch of data on schools and applicants, and it also shows what kind of activities that a majority of their matriculants have done. One recommendation I would have is if you're worried about that, for example, I don't like basic science research. And I did some of that during my gap year, but I also did a lot of community research out in the field. And I wrote about both of those in my app. Like I started both of them right when I submitted my application. So I wrote about both of them. And I will say that I was never asked, or my basic research was never even asked about or looked at, but my community research was, because that's what my whole application was just focused on anyway. So if you're scared about that, do research, and there's always going to be some type of field that you'll like doing research in because the work revolves around what you're passionate about. But if you feel like you don't have the time or you really just don't want that, it's not necessarily a requirement, but you want to show those leadership skills. You want to show that you can work with a team, that you can start a project and see it through to the end, that you can commit to hours every single week. That's why research is important when you're looking to get into med school. It's not just about the science. It's about what you take away from that, especially because you'll be working with faculty that are in this type of academic arena. So that's the main thing to take away from research. So if you can get that in a different activity, even better.
Julio, David?
I was gonna say something similar to Ali. Yes, I think I didn't have much research when I applied. I remember it was only one project that we were doing at the same. It was a community project because similar to Ali, I don't like basic science research to be in the lab and do that. So kind of just jump in this project about chronic diseases on refugees and asylees that came through our clinic that one of the fellows at UCSF was doing. So that's what the research that I was doing. And it was, so as an immigrant, I really like that because I work with similar people with similar backgrounds, similar language, a lot of this shared experience that I have. So I truly enjoyed that. And yeah, most takeaways just if you start a project, you develop a plan and you finish it, that's I think the most valuable thing that they will see. Even now when I'm at medical school and I went to this talk with some surgery residents, they were saying, yeah, like some of the applications that we see, you want to see that the project was started, implemented and completed, because when you're in this academic surgery programs, they say, yeah, that's kind of what you're going to have to do when one or your years. So the main takeaway is that if you can find a project that you're passionate about, that not necessarily has to be basic science, but it's something that you like to do, and then you're committed to it, I think that's more than one. You don't have to have like 10 projects, pretty much. You just, as long as you get one, or even if you don't have one, but you have some work that applies to something that you want to do, you can see commitment into it. I think that's a lot of value.
David, you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was a little different in that I did not have any community research at all. I had very, very basic science research. I did medical chemistry, so I was making drugs for patients that trying to discover like new medications for neurological illnesses. And I think that helped me just because my app was very annoyingly neuroscience type of, but you don't have to have research to get in at all, for sure. It's good if you do, because I think it's important if you try a couple of projects, like if you try community type of projects, if you can somehow manage to get a clinical type of project, like looking at patient data, for example, or something like I did, like basic science, like at the bench. It's nice to be able to at least try those different facets of research and then say, okay, I hate all of it for sure. Like, I don't want to be a type of doctor who does research. Because when you go to medical school, if you want to be any sort of surgeon or something a little harder to match in, you will be expected to do research. I started research in my first 2 weeks of medical school because the specialty that I want is very research heavy. It's the practice is doing research and applying it to the patient in the next week. And a lot of medicine is that. I didn't realize that going in at all. I just thought that, like you go to clinic and you see your patient and then you give them a drug. But a lot of doctors at academic centers do research, and they will they'll do research on a device and they'll literally use that device the next week as soon as it gets approved because it can help the patient. So, you want to do stuff in the research field to know if that's the type of clinician you want to be. Obviously, you don't have to be that type of clinician. Like primary care and pediatrics and all these other things that maybe are not so research heavy are just like so crucial to helping out people, and doing good work. So in short, you don't need it, but it's nice to try it and then say, okay, for sure, I don't like it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add two things. Is research is important because that's how medicine moves forward and advances. But when you're done, even in residency and when you're done, you have to read articles just to stay up to date and see what's happening. Even if you're in private practice in a cabin in Montana, you still have to look at peer review and so going through that process, and that's why most schools look for it. And I would say with research is, it's one of those things that they say you don't have to have it, but if it comes down to you and another person and you have the same MCAT score, same GPA, same major, everything, but if that person has research and you don't, guess what's going to happen? And so, and the reality of it is, this is how medicine works. And there are summer programs, you could do it for 6 to 8 weeks. They teach you. A lot of the other programs now, if you have some experience, they'll pay you. So if you're working at Starbucks versus doing research, so it's one of those things that, they say, oh, well, I don't really, yeah, there's a lot of things that we don't like to do. You have to do rotations that you're not going to be really passionate about, but you're going to have to do it. And so that's just one of those part of things with life. And then the other part of it, research is not just sitting in a bench, what David did and, titrate, I had a friend who got into Mayo Clinic and he did refugee research for a year and a half. I had another person who did sociology research in prisons and I think he got into Harvard. So there's a lot of people that do research that is very not even anything to do with medicine, but really it can enhance your thing. And so, yeah, and so that's the only thing that I would add is that's how learning happens. And, even in medical school, or I mean, residency, you meet every once a week and you literally have journal club and you have all of these other things. So if you can't speak that language, it's kind of like saying, I want to go live in Spain, but I don't really want to learn Spanish. I mean, you could probably get away with it if you speak English, but it's not going to be a good, experience for you to be able to speak that language. So research is the language of science. So Ollie had something. You don't need to raise your hand. You can just cut me off.
I just want to add onto that. You're talking about opportunities for research. If you're in community college and you're concerned and let's say you want to get started on research, one thing I did, so like a lot of the labs were closed during COVID and I didn't have time to take the classes where you go into a lab and you do research for credit. And I just cold emailed a bunch of professors and faculty at the med school, at DGSOM. And that's how I got like a lot of the 2 research opportunities that I was doing in my gap year. So if you are concerned about that, the instant you transfer, or you can even try it in community college, is like email faculty that are doing research, and you can just go on the faculty list and find professors that are doing research, and just ask if you can help for free, whatever they need. So be like, I want to work with you. I'm really interested in your project because X, Y, and Z. Don't just cold call and use the same spam email. Really show interest, really show why you want to work with them. And then ask, can I have a position with you? And you'll get 100 no's before you get a yes, but you just need that one yes, and you'll get introduced into research. And having that one experience will get a lot more yeses in the future. So that's just one thing I wanted to mention in case we don't touch on research again.
I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
like
add- oh,
no,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Julio.
I just wanted to like add something like Ali. Yeah. So pretty much we send. That's the same thing that I kind of like did. Well, now is in medical school. We have like an undergrad that's working with us in a project at the OR, and she is not part of the medical school or anything at all. But she transferred into UC Davis, and she emailed like a lot of the cardiothoracic surgeons that are at the medical school, and she was able to get on board with the project that me and my classmates are doing, and with the attending and the resident. So she's helping us there, even though she's not haven't applied yet. She's going to take her NCAT, I think, next year. But she was able to jump on this project because she did email a lot of people. Like Ali said, a lot of people just say like no. I've even experienced as a medical student right now, in order to jump into projects, like a lot of people just say no. But there's some that say yes, and you can get to meet with them and that. But as long as you kind of show why you want to do it, and then you really show like a genuine interest in the project, a lot of people will be willing to meet with you, and they can even jump in those projects that already started. Yeah. Or if you have an idea of starting one, a lot of them are also very friendly to that. Yeah. Because these people are very busy, and if you have an idea, you really present it well to them, they will be your PI for that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a thing called hustle. You gotta hustle a little bit. And then one of the other things, and I'll tell you everybody this, and I've said this a few times, if you get into a research project or anything, they're gonna give you the crap work to start with. So a lot of times when you say I'm gonna do research, they show up and they'll give you like 10 articles, and they say go home and read those and come back. And this is a way to test people. And so you come back and you're like, oh, I don't have any questions. I know everything that I read. And they know that you don't know anything about it. Most of the people that even give you those, that's like a really good way to show them that you're really not interested. So, you know, getting the no's, you're gonna get 100 no's before you get a yes. But but you will get 100 no's if you don't apply at all. So it's kind of one of those things that you're going to have to do. And yeah, they're going to make you jump through hoops. Anything else, everything in life, just kind of like, like Julio's interested in surgery. They're not asking him, oh, Julio, come over here and do a heart transplant or do a cabbage or whatever. They're going to make him sit in the back of the line, look, and then kind of move up, and it takes a long time to move up to the head. And so you just have to be persistent. And and I think the difference between these gentlemen is that they were persistent and they kind of did it, but and they were given a lot of no's until they got that one yes. And so but yeah, so I think we've killed anything with research. So I put a bunch of links in there. We had someone who runs this website called RU Programs for Community College Students. Check out that talk. We don't want to spend this whole time talking about research because we had someone that talked 2 hours about how to find research as a community. So you can check that out. This is another question. Somebody says, have you taken 3 lab classes in a single semester? And do you have any advice? I would say that unless you're like not working and you're basically, I don't know how you're able to do it, but maybe these guys have done it and they have, but I would just say you're nuts, but that's just, it's just very, go ahead, guys.
If you need to do it, then you got no choice, right? So just stay organized. I think my hardest semester I took my second semester of OChem. So with the lab, I took physics with calculus. I took calculus 2. I took an English requirement and a sociology class at the same time. And I was working. So, it's possible. Just, really stay on top of it. And thankfully, a lot of the prereqs tend to be related. If you're taking calculus and physics at the same time, and your physics happens to have calculus, you're practicing for both practically. Obviously, it depends where you go, but stay organized, stay on top of it. If you can't, I'd limit it to 2 labs though. That is pretty tough. And you want to do well, right? Your prereqs are your bread and butter. So you want to maximize your GPA and get as many A's as possible. And of course, the better that you learn the foundations of science in these classes, the logic, the rules that you have to follow to arrive to an answer, the better that you're going to do on the MCAT, because science won't change. Doesn't matter where you went. That's why people take the MCAT, so that if you learned it well, you'll do fine on that test.
Yeah, I would say like the most labs that I took were 2. While I was doing the UC Berkeley extension, I never took 3 labs. It was OChem 2 and its lab, and physics, the second semester of physics, and the lab as well. And yeah, it was just a lot of work, so it's kind of very time consuming. And plus, similar to David, I was also working at the time. So it's kind of like you just have to like keep yourself organized. I think 3 labs is a little bit too much that's for me. Like personally, I wouldn't do that. I think my limit will be at 2. And then if you want to take another class, you can take another probably like some non-science classes that would also help you cumulative GPA if you want to improve that. But yeah, I would keep it at 2 labs. Yeah, my personal take on that. Yeah.
Yeah, in community college, if I ever had 2 labs, I would do 2 labs and then an easier GE with a professor that I heard was a little easier, just because don't want to like put too much stress on yourself. So yeah.
One question, or
Go ahead.
sorry, Juben, did you?
No, go ahead.
I saw a lot of questions about the MCAT and when you guys took the MCAT and what you did to prepare for it. So maybe as we're getting closer to the end, if you guys want to answer a little bit about that.
I could start like, well, I had the material very fresh in my mind through the extension classes. So I took the MCAT. Let me see, I did submit my application first and then took the MCAT. I don't recommend doing that, but because it was during the pandemic, the MCAT got postponed like 3 times for me. So I was like, I just gotta take it and then just go and take it, because you just want to get that exam over as fast as you can while the material is still fresh in you. So I would say solely studying for that about 6 months dedicated to the MCAT, and I did use UWorld. That was kind of like my main study tool for that. Just like I remember probably 20 to 30 questions a day, and then the next day I would review them, make sure the material like I knew it again, then I tried to get to the whole question bank. I was not able to do that because there's a lot of questions in UWorld, but yeah, so I did 6 months of dedicated time. My MCAT got postponed twice, and I was able to finally take it in, I think it was like early July, once my application was already sent. So I wouldn't recommend doing that again. Just if you preferably can take the MCAT, know your score, and then apply. That's like the most ideal scenario, and I would think that's what you should aim for. And I would say between 4 to 6 months of studying for the MCAT, for me, that would have been enough. But it's really dependent on how comfortable you feel, because there's going to reach a point that you take those practice questions and your scores kind of level at the same time, and you do know that, okay, this is most likely where I'm going to score in the real thing. And that's when you should take it, once you feel ready. You're not going to feel 100% ready, but once you get those scores always in the same, I'll say that's a good time to take it.
Yeah, for sure. So similarly, I did just UWorld. So that's a question bank with really fantastic questions. If you have to pay for anything, I pay for UWorld for sure. I finished the whole Q bank, and after every single thing I got wrong, I wrote an explanation in my own words about why I was wrong. And I'm doing the very same thing now. So UWorld stands for USMLE World, the United States Medical Licensing Exam World. So you take that for your medical licensing exam, step 1 and step 2. So that's the question bank that medical students use as well when you get into medical school to prep for your licensing exams, right? Your step 1 being at the end of your 1 year, if you're like Ali at UCLA, 1.5 years if you're like me at Keck, or 2 years if you're at a different school, like Julio. But using that question bank is fantastic, and it's good to get used to it because you're gonna see it again and again. Anki really helped me. I've always loved that note card app. It's free. You can look up a couple YouTube videos, but I use it in medical school every single day, and I even used it in undergrad in some of the really tough classes. So that's what I did. Anki, UWorld, and then Wikipedia to look up stuff I didn't understand.
Yeah, I took my MCAT the fall of my senior year. So going back to actually what David said in the beginning, due to like improper planning and not knowing about the system too well and like the application cycle, that's actually why I took my gap year. So when you're thinking of taking the MCAT, make sure you schedule it correctly. And I actually didn't study UWorld that much. And because I didn't, when I got closer to my exam, I was like in full panic mode because I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to. But some of the things I did study were like I had like the Princeton review books. I wouldn't really recommend going too deep on the books, but I focused more so on Anki decks that were pre-made that were related to those books, which you can like find throughout Reddit. And just did a bunch of Anki every day, and then just a bunch of practice tests. And once I did the double AMC section bank, that is like a huge resource. The section bank is all the science sections. So bio and biochemistry, chemistry and physics, and then psych soc. And you do like a bunch of passages, 100 questions for each of those. And then it explains exactly how the double AMC, which are the writers of the MCAT, want you to think about these passages, want you to think about these questions. And you start to realize, which I feel like one of the biggest things that really helped improve my score is when you do these practice questions, one thing you want to really see is how answers are incorporated inside the passages. And if you can find that and think of the MCAT as a critical thinking test, I think you'll be like really good to go. But yeah, Anki, UWorld, those are like, and the double AMC material, probably like the big 3 for what I'd recommend.
Yeah, and I would say that we're going to have a speaker over 2 days that's going to talk about the MCAT for 3.5 hours. So it's in December 20th and 21st. Make sure you show up to that and ask him a question. He writes books on the MCAT and how to take the MCAT, and he's actually taken the MCAT himself twice. And I think he got on the old one, he got like a 44, and on the new one, he got a 526. So that's what he does now. He has a PhD in neuroscience and writes MCAT. Yeah, and then the other question was about finances, tuition, scholarships, money. Unless any of you have won the lottery or something, which you could tell us how to do that as well, but it's a joke. Yeah, so can you guys share a little bit about like financial issues and like scholarships, student loans, all of that good stuff?
So the unfortunate truth is that if you're not rich, you're gonna have to pay for it yourself. And if you're not rich, that means you don't have any money. So you're gonna have to take loans. And that's okay. If you got accepted to medical school, you will more than likely end up becoming a doctor, or at the very least having a MD degree, which is exceptionally lucrative if you want to go into a different field later on, pharmacy, pharmaceutical companies or consulting or whatever. So your degree is good. You're getting a good degree. you will make money after, so long as you do well and do your best. So that said, you will more than likely have to take loans, and it's okay. Most of us take loans, and being smart with your money to take as little loans as possible is the best thing that you can do. There's a book / podcast / YouTube videos called The White Coat Investor. I very much recommend that you read or listen to that, or just read a synopsis. It's a doctor who talks, he's a financial advisor as well. So he talks about how to save money during medical school. Look into scholarships. There's many different types of scholarships, depending on the school you go to. UCLA, for example, where Ali goes, is very, very well known for giving very fantastic scholarships. And USC, where I go, is very well known for sometimes giving scholarships. So, it depends on where you go, and the school gives different types of money, depending on where you go. So there's also scholarships that come up. My school is very lovely in that our student affairs office sends us emails about the scholarships that open up. Surely, if you go to a med school, they will do the same for you. So, there's like all kinds of things that you can apply for. Like, I think I applied for like a poetry contest scholarship thing. So doing those little random things, and if you really want to, doing it more like a part-time job type of thing, you will very likely see, a return in the time that you put in and get some more money out of it. But, for the most part, loans, and that's the unfortunate truth, but it's okay. You'll pay them off later. PSLF is another thing, public service loan forgiveness. You can Google that. If you are a resident in an in-need area or an in-need field, your loans can get forgiven, so long as you meet the criteria and make payments on time. So looking that up is important too.
Yeah, to add to what David said, like I know for example, at Davis, there's like a lot of, all the UCs have these paths called like prime programs, and UC Davis has quite a bit of those. And then I know you can apply, once you do your application, they're going to select if you want to apply to those programs. And for example, at Davis, there's this program called ACE, and I believe there's like another one, Native Prime, which is like a new program that they started. I know ACE is funded by Kaiser, so everybody that gets into the program gets like a full scholarship, but it's like a different application that they go into that. So they do help for that. It's, I think, a little bit more competitive, and you do have to commit to primary care. So either you go into family medicine, I think OBGYN, and I think they allow internal medicine to go into that. And they want you to go more into Kaiser and kind of like work in that system, because Kaiser funds a good part of those programs at Davis. I know that the Native Prime also has scholarships, but it's kind of like you apply to, for example, you apply to Davis, and then you have to select if you want to apply to these extra programs, and that requires you to write more essays and go through a different interview cycle. And if you're accepted, you can be accepted into medical school, but not into those programs. And those are considered a little bit more tailored to what you want to do, and a little bit more competitive. And then some of those do have the full scholarships. If you're not like, if you're like what they call this basic MD, just like an MD program, most likely you will have to get loans out and apply to scholarship on your own. That's what I've been doing, kind of just applying on the side to some scholarships, because that allows you to offset the cost of the loans. And a good factor also for medical school is kind of like where you want to live, like the cities. So a lot of the cities are like, for example, I know LA is a lot more expensive than Sacramento for sure, where I live. Or like I have one of my friends goes to UCSF, and San Francisco, one of those most expensive cities in the entire country. So he is gonna get a lot more loans that I would get at Sacramento, for example. So the cost of living is something that you have to go into account. Also, kind of see how many you want roommates. So you don't want roommates. You want to live alone. Like, it's a lot of things to take into account. But most of the part, you will have to get some type of loans eventually. Even if you have a full scholarship, I know some people that have one at Davis, you still need money to live, right? Because sometimes they just cover your full tuition, but then you need money to like buy your food and all the things that you might require to get some of those like federal loans or all of those other things on the side. But yeah, look into, when you're applying, look into those. If you apply to UCs, look into the prime programs, because a lot of those sometimes get full funding. I don't think all of them do, but quite a bit I know at Davis do, and some at UCI. I think the Prime LC does get full funding, but it depends on how they rank you and a lot of other factors as well.
Yeah, those specialty programs usually end up in some type of scholarship. So outside of the Prime at UC Davis, there's something called Teach MS, which you work with like underserved communities, and you don't have to work in those areas when you graduate, but it's during med school. And I think they offer like 20 grand if you get in, which is like a nice chunk of money still. And at UCLA, we have Prime as well. So Prime LA. And I'm pretty sure like most of those students are on a full ride as well. And like David said, actually 30-something% of our class is on a full scholarship.
It's
I'm not
actually a
one of
little
those
bit
people.
more. It's actually a little more. It's like 50%.
There we go. So I got in really, really late to UCLA. So like everything was kind of taken in terms of scholarship. So some of the things I did, I decided to commute instead of living in Westwood, just because Westwood is so expensive. So expensive. I'd have to spend at least like $25,000 a year just for housing. So I decided I'll just commute. It'll probably be a better decision to make there. Another thing is I found out about this loan just a few days ago. It's called the Federal Health and Human Services Loans for Disadvantaged Students. And so with this loan, your interest doesn't accrue until you end residency. So if you took out $80,000 in loans, that $80,000, like when you leave residency, that's when the interest starts hitting on the $80,000, which is of huge impact, because if you just take the normal federal loan, your interest begins to accrue the moment you take it out. And then it's a 5% rate. So that's a type of loan that you want to look for. And the way that you look for these things is you just bombard your financial aid office, like just ask them, meet with them, email them, ask them if there's opportunities, ask if they know scholarships, if they have any aid that they can give you. You might be able to find something. There's a lot of need-based aid as well at schools, especially like UCLA, I know has a lot of need-based aid. And at the end of the day, you're gonna take some loans, and it's just you just have to bite the bullet. Like David said, you're gonna become a physician most likely, or at least have an MD, and you will, hopefully be able to pay off those loans pretty soon. So don't worry, don't get scared by loans. I know someone who really wanted to become a doctor, but if they wanted to become a doctor, they had to take loans out, and so they decided not to. And I don't think that's a reason not to go into med school and become a physician if that's what your goal is. Loans are okay. Most people take them, and it's just part of the process.
Yeah, I put a link. The director of financial aid from Stanford gave a talk, and we recorded it. And she talked about a lot of these programs. But the bottom line is that unless you're independently wealthy, you're going to have to take out loans. And last night, we actually had a president of a medical school who came from like dirt poor Ohio. And he graduated med school in 1990, but he had $160,000, which is now it's like $400,000. And he went to family medicine, which is like the lowest paying one. And he went into academic medicine, and he's like, I was able to buy a house in Philadelphia, in New York, and now in California. I've lived comfortably. My kids went to private school, and all of these different things. And so you're going to be okay. There's a lot of programs. There's also the CalCares program, where if you want to go in an underserved community or rural area, they'll give you $300,000. There's a lot of programs. So money should not be an issue. You're going to make a good amount of money. You're always going to have a job. We have people that are making $100,000 in California, $80,000 to $100,000, and they go out and buy $600,000 homes out. And it's like, but you're not willing to take out a $300,000 loan out to make $350,000 a year, and your income goes up every year. So, it's really hard when you're poor and, to realize, oh my God, this is so much money, but it's an investment. You're investing in something that's going to generate money for you. Your MD and, your licenses generates money. So, that shouldn't be, you've got a lot of things to worry about. money should not be one of them. But also that doesn't mean that, you should, and the other part of it too is that you should be frugal with your spending. You do not need a new iPad, a new iPhone every 6 months. You don't need certain things, do things for your mental health. If taking a vacation is good for you, do that. But anyways, somebody asked about how do you deal with mental health in med school? And how do you guys, and also some of the things that are available to you at your schools as well.
So to answer that question, one of the reasons that I chose Davis is because of my family that lives in San Francisco. So I wanted to be like close to them to say I can come visit them anytime, and it's only like an hour and a half away from Sacramento. So that's one of the main things that also take that into account as well. If your family is like close by, even if you get into another school, also take that because you don't want to be far away from them when something happens, so they need your help or something like that. That's something to consider. And it's also your support network and all of that. And I was lucky enough to be able to get close to them and in a pretty good school, just like very, very, very here. So I think that's important. Also, another thing that I try to do is all the hobbies that you had before medical school, I keep those. Like, I still do capoeira at the park in Sacramento, like every Sunday. Still play my guitar, and I still go like dancing, what I used to do when I was just not in medical school. So don't give on those things because they're like important. As far as resources that my school has, they do have counselors, and they have quite a bit. They have expanded like lately because a lot of people were having like a lot of I don't know, there was like a just generalized stress in the class, and a lot of people were required, like the class actually as a whole requested to have a lot more counselors available. And the school listened, like honestly, like I feel like most of the schools are very good listening to their student body, and they do changes whenever they see that they're going to benefit as a whole, because the school doesn't want to see you fail. Like they are investing this time and money with you, and they want to make you sure you graduate, that you pass your step exams, that you match. That's kind of what the purpose of the school is. So they will do a lot of things in order for you to feel like you're gonna do well. And one of those things is having those mental health resources. And I know a lot of my classmates, they use them, and you usually can get appointments and all of that like very soon to that. And then also there's like a lot of things outside of medical school that you need to do. Find like a group of friends, kind of like do that, go hang out, like eat, visit your family if you can. But I think that those are the most important things that I do.
All right. Somebody asked, oh, did I cut somebody off?
No,
No,
go
okay.
ahead.
Somebody asked this one, it's if you've given an early acceptance to med school that asks for commitment and deposit, but you're holding out for offers from another school, how do you navigate that?
From what I remember, if you accept an early acceptance, you cannot accept an acceptance from another school. But I could be wrong.
I think the question that they weren't referring to the early acceptance program. They were more of just like an earlier.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
My
Yeah, I
bad.
thought the same thing at first too, but no, it's just an early in the cycle acceptance.
I see. Deposits from another school are tough. I don't think a lot of schools do that anymore, but I mean, some surely do. You might have to bear the cost of that, $100 or $200. But if it's like a top school or something, then accept it and just celebrate. But if you have some other schools there that you really, really want, and you're waiting on UCLA, for example, and you got hope, then pay a deposit and see where the cycle takes you. But letting them know early that as soon as you hear back that you got accepted or whatever from another school, and emailing them, letting them know early. If you're on the wait list, for example, after getting an acceptance, don't forget to email. It's good courtesy, and it opens up the spot for someone else to take a well-deserving seat in the medical school.
Yeah, that exact situation actually happened to me. So I really wanted to go to UCLA, got into Davis. I paid my deposit at Davis. That's where I thought I was going, and I was waiting. So basically, there's this I think June 1st is the day that you have to choose, like you have to commit to a school. And
I
it's
think
like
I think it's May 15th.
now it's May 15th. So last year
Yeah.
was June 1st. I guess it's May 15th now. So on that day, you'll just be like, all right, I'm picking this school. And like I think before that, you can kind of plan to enroll at a school. So I was planning to enroll at Davis. And then like whatever you get the acceptances by that day, then you choose. But before that, if you get into a school that you like, even if it's not your number one choice, if you can see yourself going there, just pay the deposit, stay safe, you know, have an acceptance, and like that's the most important part right there.
Yeah, I think the rule is that May 15th is the cutoff, or whatever the cutoff is that year. So if they offer it to you, they have to hold that spot for you till then. But after that day, if you don't pay, if you don't commit, and you can commit and then they could wait, like I think till June for a deposit, then you're okay. But after that date, they could technically withdraw that admission. Um, and every school knows every place you've been accepted to. They could see that in the queue, so it's you can't be really sly about it. Um, and being honest is also a good policy. Because of my family, I want to go to UCLA, and I've had a really good friend of mine who got into UC Davis, and she really wanted to go there, and literally had an apartment down in Loma Linda and was about to ready to start there. And then the week before, they told her, "Hey, we got a spot open for you," and she just like broke her, lease and everything, and went to UCLA to Davis because that's where she wanted to go. So, and I think Ollie is the prime example of the scramble. And it just comes down to you might have to give up your $100 deposit. I know some of the foreign medical schools are not the same way. They want you to put like 1,000 to 2,000 or $5,000 down, and that's a whole different ball game that I'm not really going to go into that. But most medical schools, they want to, they don't want to make, you know, they don't want to make a bigger hurdle for you to go, and they know that everybody, you know, scrambles and wants to go to where they want to go to. Um, so the other question is, when you transferred from a community college to university, was there a shock wave? Were you paralyzed or culture shock or any of that stuff? And how
I
was that
think
experience?
I think the biggest shock was just how big the classrooms are. My first class had like 350 students. And I remember just walking to the lecture hall and I was like, oh, like this isn't just what's in movies. This is like a real class. I'm gonna be here the rest of the semester. Um, I always argue that like the classes I took at community college, especially with my professors and like the science courses, were harder than any courses I took at university. But that might be because of the major I had. So I was taking more of a biology major in community college, and then I was in the psych department doing psychobiology at UCLA. And so the classes kind of differ there, but I wouldn't say there's a big shock, because what tends to happen, and I see this with a lot of transfers, is we tend to do better, or like as far as I saw at my school, the transfers were doing better than most of the original 4-year students. And I think that's because when you're in community college and you're working and you're doing these other activities, and you're also, you have this goal that you have to transfer, so you have to do really well in community college, you gain the skills that are really necessary to do well in classes like forever. You have good time management, you're organized, you plan, like you just sit down, you study, you go to office hours, you email your professors, you collaborate with students, and that translates into you doing really well in your classes once you go off.
David?
Yeah, just as Ali said, definitely. For me, it was a little tough. I went into a major that I thought was super cool, but then I got there and they told me that it was like one of the harder majors at my school. So I was like, all right. My first class, yeah, it was like enormous compared to my little community college class with 30 people, I was now in a class with like 280 people. And then people would drop the class. I never saw that before. In community college, yeah, maybe one or two, but for the most part, people would stick it through and get the grade that they wanted. But there, I saw tons of people like change majors off of one class, and it was crazy, and they would cap how many people could pass or get an A or fail or whatever. So just keeping in mind that you made it that far, you already transferred, you're almost done, and you already know how to study is the most important. Just like Ali said, Ali gave great advice. So just keep the faith and stay steadfast, and you'll be all right.
So this is a question somebody asked, is there such a thing as easy medical school? I have an overall 2.5 GPA and starting my prereqs. Apparently this person has a bachelor's, that's non-science. I need to take about 120 credits before I apply. Should I focus on holistic easy medical school? And so I don't have a chance and I feel confident about candidates that have a 3.7 GPA. So I would just add one thing. There's no such thing as the easy acceptance to medical school. And the second thing is almost every medical school does holistic review. It's part of the AAMC holistic. You could Google, put, admission process. So I think almost every medical school in the US that's holistic because everybody else is doing it. So, and I would add that, there's 100% chance of you not getting in if you don't apply. So, obviously 2.5 is a little bit lower. So Julio's probably could answer that and the other people, but keeping the faith and moving forward, I think that's what I would say. But Julio although, can you share a little bit about your experience and what you did?
Yeah, I definitely can. So my overall GPA once I graduated from my finance and accounting degree at San Jose State was, I think it was like 2.95. I think that was my overall, because I had a lot of F in accounting classes and like taxation classes. Those classes are not, they kind of like pretty boring, like horrible classes to take. So what I tried to focus on, I had been out of school for a very long time. So what I tried to focus was take a lot of science classes, first of all, to show that I was able to kind of perform at the medical schools. We're able to, okay, you can get A's, you can do you can do as well as all the students that have just recently graduated. You are more committed because you actually show initiative to enroll in these classes, take them, show that you can perform. And that created like a big disparity between my two GPAs, because once you submit your applications through the AAMC, you're gonna have two GPAs. You're gonna have the cumulative one, and you're gonna have the science one. So my cumulative one did go up over 3. It went to 3.2, I think, at the end. And my science GPA was like very high. It was like 3.98, and was mostly because it's all science classes. I scored like almost perfect on all those classes. So there was like this very big disparity. And one of those things that was also brought up in some interviews was like, okay, you have like, you obviously can show what was like, there was something going on back in the day, and sometimes I had to explain what was going on in those times when I didn't score as well on that, and I had to make up on other sides of my application, right? So I did well on the science classes by my science GPA. I did pretty good on the MCAT, and I had all this work experience coming from like bank and Department of Public Health and some research. And I feel like if I had to highlight something in my application was my letters of rec, because all those were people that knew me from quite some years, and they were my previous bosses at the bank, and my previous boss at the Department of Public Health, and some research PI doctor at UCSF that I work with. Those were mostly my letters of recs, and they told me that they were like a pretty good one. And there's people that knew you for a while. So I had to like compensate somehow, because there's going to be, unless you have like perfect everything. In my case, it was not. It was a community GPA that I felt like a little bit weird on, but I compensated by getting like work experience, by getting some research, showing my science GPA like very high, and getting like a good MCATs. That's how I compensated for all of the previous low GPA that I had at San Jose State. But I will say you can make it if you have. I had like lower than a 3.0, that you can still make it to medical school even if you have that, because you the most recent performance. A lot of the schools care about that. Yeah, and the MCAT. I mean, the MCAT. I mean, we don't like standardized testing, but the MCAT is like pretty big, pretty important. Yeah.
Another question: what is the biggest challenge you faced first year of medical school?
Yeah, so for me, it was definitely just adjusting to the many different changes that medical school brings. Professionalism is a big thing in medical school. You're expected to act maybe differently than you're used to, and interact, with your peers and patients, superiors, people under you, all in different ways. So you have to be, this person who's able to interact with all these people in all the appropriate ways. That's for sure the biggest thing. That's something that you're going to learn throughout, your career. Obviously, in all of these things, you have to be respectful and kind and genuine, be who you are. But you have to know your role, especially in the hospital, and know your responsibilities. And when you're given autonomy to do something, to care for patients, to go interview your SP, your standardized patient, or show up for the anatomy lab and prep this or that, you have to make sure that you do it, and that you make time for all these different things. So that for me was the biggest struggle.
I probably don't have much to say, considering that I just started like 2 months ago. And on like a more realistic note, the first month was more of an orientation and kind of getting you excited for med school. So it's been like 5 weeks, but I will say just the adjustment of like, because I took a gap year, so even though I was doing activities, I had a little more free time and flexibility in my schedule to kind of choose what I wanted to do each day. And then it's just getting back into like, oh, I have class from this time to this time today. I got to do like this activity that I signed up for, and I have to study. So it's just making that adjustment back into like just being a student again, really.
I think like for me, the biggest kind of like struggle my first year was because I'm used to work, and I just like to just go and actually like feel productive and like work and earn something and be like I felt like I was doing something while you're studying. I mean, you're doing something, but it just didn't feel what I was used to for the past like almost 10 years. So that was very odd to just become like a full-time student again. And then that's kind of like my main struggle. So because I spent my time studying, I felt like I was very unproductive. I felt like I just want to go to my third year, just send me to the rotations. If you want me to be in the hospital at 5 in the morning, I'll be there. But I just don't like to be in the library and like reading this and taking practice questions and all of that. But I had to kind of like understand that's just like the basic science that prepares us to pass like or step one, which is kind of like the first thing that we had to do. And as long as we get that, eventually, like anything in life, I feel like you have to do things that you don't like in a way. And in my case, it was becoming like a full-time student once again and fully dedicated to studying and making time to do all the things that will still allow me to feel that sense of fulfillment where I feel like you're going to go into the clinics. That's why one of the main things that I did at Davis was enrolling in the student run clinics and participating in those, going every weekend and kind of like shadowing the OR, things that made me still feel like I was actually doing some work and not just fully studying. Yeah, and I still like to this date, like even I've been, I mean, July, August, September, almost like 4 months into my second year. I still get that need of like I just want to go to the clinic, I just want to go do my work and do that. But it's gotten a lot better because I know now it's got to shift my focus is the step one, which I will be taking next year, and kind of just get into that because then you see the live. In my case, like I don't know, people kind of dread the third year because you just go to rotation. But in my case, I'll be like, oh, that's what I want. I just want to go and do some work already because I like don't want to be anymore doing these lectures and stuff. So I'm looking at that as my ultimate goal to kind of get through this studying session, past step one, and then I can finally go and feel like I'm doing something. So that was my adjustment going from full-time work to kind of just full-time studying. Yeah.
All righty. Does anybody have any other question? Or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. Yeah, I would just say I think this is about perseverance, and I think everybody has their own path and being committed. It's a marathon. I think some of you have asked some really good questions, and we put some links in that chat for you. Some of these things are not like 30-second answer responses, like financial aid, studying for the MCAT, study skills, and so we put some of the topics that we covered, and you could take a look at them. Getting into research is not like a quick thing; it's a whole process, and so definitely check those out. And if anybody has a last minute question, please type it in before we let our speakers go, because I'm pretty sure they all have studying to do and sleep to catch and enjoy the sunshine, I guess. And I have to go to sleep because I have to work tonight. So I appreciate everyone coming.